Hey Steve, welcome. There we go. Good evening. Good evening. How you guys doing? What's your name, MRJ? John. Okay. Good evening, John. Thanks for joining. Captain Crunch, thanks for joining. All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about what's your boss talking about when you're not in the room, when you're not around. Um, so my name is Mike Gelman. I'm a career coach, and I'm also an internal consultant and facilitator. Um, I work for a Fortune 500 company. I also have a coaching practice on the side, and I'm also the author of Pipe Dreams, Seven Pipelines of Career Success. Pipe Dreams, Seven Pipelines of Career Success. You can find out more about me on mikegelman.com, my website, and find out information. I'm going to be adding more information. There's replays of these periscopes. I think I've got 4 up there so far. I just started doing these periscopes this past week, so you're on the maiden voyage. This is my experimentation with this medium. And if you find it useful, tap hearts and all that, share with friends. You can swipe and share on your screen to share this Periscope with friends of yours or followers, Twitter followers, whoever's following you there. So my goal is my reason for doing this is, a couple reasons. One is I see so many people suffer, needlessly suffer, with their careers and feeling stuck when there's things that they can do, there's steps that they can take to take charge of their careers. And a lot of times it's just because you don't have the information. You don't know what you don't know, right? Isaiah, welcome. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And so part of my goal is to kind of, peel the curtain back. Oh, yeah. So some people we have to block for that. This is a professional broadcast, so lack of guidance, yeah, right. How many of you could use a good mentor or some guidance? So I've seen the ins and outs of what goes on behind the scenes because I facilitate those meetings behind the scenes, the formal ones anyway. And I also am privy to the informal conversations, to many of them. So I know what's on your boss's minds oftentimes, particularly in mid-sized to large companies. In smaller companies, it operates a little differently, but the same principles apply. So if you're in a mom and pop shop, or if you're at a Fortune 500, or if you're in a nonprofit, or in your working government, a lot of these principles will apply. And so, after facilitating what we call, so let's get started then. This was a request last night. We had a really good conversation last night that went a half hour longer than I planned. I set these up to be, a half hour because it's not only manageable for me, but I would think for all of you with your busy schedules. So we'll see what happens tonight. But if you ask a lot of questions, I mean, that's fine. I'll answer them. That this is for you guys. So, ask questions or make comments, share your experiences. Again, I'm going to share the benefit of my experience, but you have yours as well. So I welcome that. Make this a kind of a two-way thing here and make it valuable for you. If there's things you want me to talk about in future broadcasts, let me know, and I'll make a note of that. So, okay, so what am I talking about with your bosses? What are they talking about behind the scenes, if you will? How many of you are familiar with, or you've heard this term, succession planning? Have you guys heard about succession planning? Or is that just a foreign word? No, you haven't? John? How about you, Steve? Have you heard about succession planning? I don't know if you're still on the broadcast. What size organization do you work in, John? You have, Steve? Great. So it would help me to know kind of what size organizations are working in so I can kind of tailor my advice and my experiences based on that. Maybe size of the organization and industry that you're in, something about it. You don't have to give the name of your company. I'm not asking for you to do that. Just the size and industry, that type of thing. Kind of description. Maybe even what you do for a living, like if you're a computer programmer or sales, or you can be generic if you want. So in any event, companies, the larger companies, definitely the Fortune 500, have succession planning. Mid-sized companies, some of them do, some don't. But what succession planning is, it's basically about bench strength. So companies are concerned about continuity. So what happens if someone leaves this position? Who would we have available to replace them, right? Internally, ideally, right? Succession planning is generally about internal bench strength. So how do we develop our employees in a way that we're not going to be caught hanging, if you will, if someone either wins the lottery, right? It's called an org chart. Yeah, so you think about the org chart. That's a good frame. So on the org chart, you have someone leave. Some call it replacement planning. that's what it's called sometimes, but it's actually a lot more than that. That's one aspect of it. Certainly, who's going to fill that box? So on the org chart. But so what they do is just like a baseball team. So I don't know where you're from, John, if you have a baseball team there. Steve, I know you're in Cleveland, so for the Indians, right? We all have a farm team. They have farm teams, and then they're there playing AAA or AA, whatever it may be, to get better and to develop over time. And so with succession, one part of succession planning is about readiness. So if someone were to leave tomorrow, who could we fill and when? Who could fill that position? So they might say, we have this manager position open. What about John? So this is kind of how the conversation may go. So your manager might be in the meeting and say, what about John? He does really good work. He's a high performer. He builds good relationships. And, I think he'd be good for my position, or they might be talking about a peer in the room for one of their positions. I think it'd be good for that position. And he'll share, what your strengths are, John and Steve. What are your strengths? What are maybe some of your development areas? So it might be, I think he could be ready in about 3 years, but not right now, because he's a strong performer, but he's never led people before. So he needs to get a little bit of supervisory experience first before he could take on, a manager role. He needs some experience with that. Or maybe, he's a good technical performer, but sometimes his presentation and influencing skills could use some improvement. And because in this role, you need to be able to collaborate with other managers. Mr. Southern California, welcome. You can work with other managers, and so that's a skill needed. So they may say something like this. You say, well, what would it take for John to be ready for this position? So we're estimating it would be 3 years, right? Because, it's like might be in a supervisory position for, 1 to 3 years. You hate your boss and he hates you. Yeah, that's a difficult situation, isn't it? SoCal. What do you want me to call you? Can I call you SoCal for short, or what's your name? I want to be respectful. So Todd. Okay, Todd. Yeah, that's a difficult situation. So I'm going to hold on to that and keep me honest and remind me if I don't address it. Bring it up again, will you? Because we'll explore that. What do you do when your boss doesn't like you and you don't have much respect for your boss? Because that could be a problem. That could be a problem. But there are some things you can do, some positive steps you can take. So it's not necessarily the end of the world, but it definitely would take a lot of work. So great, thank you. All right, so back to the example I was giving before. So, your manager's saying, okay, John might be ready in 3 years. He needs to get some supervisory experience. And you know what? There's this project coming up. I could move him into that, but first I need to, see if he's interested, right? Sometimes they don't even know if you're interested in a leadership role. And I can't tell you how many employees have come to me in confidence saying, they're really upset or frustrated with their boss, angry with their boss, that the boss isn't doing enough to help them with their career. And sometimes we're our own worst enemy, in all honesty. I'm just going to give you the unvarnished truth. We're our own worst enemy because we're not we're not always clear on what we want, right? We're looking to our boss to figure that out for us, okay? B, we do know what we want, kind of, sort of, but we haven't told our boss. Or C, maybe our expectations are really, really high and they might not be realistic. There might be a few steps in between. I'm hearing a lot of that from leaders right now, and a lot of that regarding people entering the workforce now, in terms of their expectations being really high and not necessarily realistic, in terms of the time it would take to move into a director role or higher level manager role. So there's three things that I frame. I call it the 3 A's of potential. In my book, I get into a lot more detail, but I'll share with you. So they're looking at three things, essentially. So what is your aptitude? I call it. So aptitude is, what are your capabilities? What have you demonstrated? That's one data point, if you will. And what have they seen in terms of your potential capabilities? So maybe you've handled a situation that was a high conflict situation. You're able to resolve it. Maybe you were able to make a sale to a difficult customer or someone that you're a high volume sales, or whatever it may be. Maybe you put out a new product or service. Working on a project team, whatever it may be. So they're looking at aptitude. What's this person able to do? And they're not looking just for today. So, my position today, if I'm the manager, and maybe you could take on my position today, but, what's going to be needed a year from now is some different skill sets. So the position is going to evolve, and I'm not sure that you have that, right? That could be one scenario, right? Or it could be, he doesn't quite have what it is today, but he's going to have what it's going to need for tomorrow. It can work that way also. So they're thinking about the present and the future, right? Because positions are often dynamic. Different industries, that's why I asked what industry you're in. Some industries are more fast moving and change and adapt quickly, and others are more slow and don't change very quickly. So you kind of have to know your organization, is it kind of stable and doesn't change very quickly, or is it adaptable, or do you have high competition? Your company could really be going through the ringer. Are you the market? Are you the dominant player in the market? Whatever it may be. If you're a small business, again, they can be a high growth business, but you also wear many hats in a smaller organization, or a startup, right? If you're in a .com, you wear many hats, or a nonprofit, right? You wear a lot of different hats. So they may be thinking about versatility, not just a single position. And so aptitude, they're thinking about a whole host of things, and not always just for one position. They may want to know, is this person worth investing in the sense that they could potentially be slotted for a number of different positions, right? It gives us flexibility as an organization. If someone retires or if someone gets promoted, something like that. So aptitude. That's kind of a little bit of a Reader's Digest on aptitude. We can take a deeper dive on that if you have some questions. Second one would be attitude. So they're looking at, and attitude has a few dimensions. One is, how engaged are you in the job? How engaged are you in the job? Are you one to go the extra mile? As Zig Ziglar says, don't know if you've heard of Zig Ziglar. He was a motivational speaker, master, one of those gurus, professional speaker. Um, he said that the road is pretty lonely on the extra mile. Got that? The road is pretty lonely on the extra mile, right? Which means that, you can stand out, right? Because if you go the extra mile, you'll stand out above the rest who are just doing the day in, day out work. And so how engaged are you? How spirited are you about the organization and committed? Are you are you a good advocate or ambassador for the company, right? Do you talk positive about the company while you're at work and when you're away from work? They don't necessarily know what you're saying away from work unless you're broadcasting it on Facebook or something like that. But what do you what's your attitude? And on the team, how do you show up every day? Are you showing up as a can-do attitude, or are you showing up disgruntled? You're frustrated or jaded somehow because you don't feel like you're getting the attention you deserve, or you feel slighted in some way. And it might be justified that whatever being upset, but if you're showing up at work that way, again, it sends signals and this negative energy. And what leaders are looking for, I'll give you an example. I shared this the other night. The CEO of a company that I worked with was facilitating a succession planning meeting with her and no limit. Oh, I love that handle. No limit. That's great. Welcome. She was I was facilitating the meeting with her and all of the officers in the team, so the vice president type of folks, and she's looking for who can elevate us, right? And another VP is like, who's going to bring positive energy to the team, right? Because who wants to bring a negative Nancy on the team or a jaded John? I'm just having fun with the names. Not you, John, of course, not you. But jaded Jacob, we'll use that. I don't want you to think I'm talking about you. They're thinking about that, right? Who's gonna complement this team, right? So it's not just the position, but how well. Oh, welcome back, Sandcastle. So how well are you able to connect and complement the rest of a leadership team? That's being given a lot more attention in corporate America, if that's where you work. In nonprofits, that's also starting to be given a little bit more attention. I don't know if any of you work in nonprofits. If you do, let me know. If not, I won't speak to nonprofits. But I used to work in the nonprofit sector for quite a long time. Very small social service agencies, as well as a very large nonprofit. And now I'm with a Fortune 500 company. I've been with a couple of Fortune 500 companies, maybe 3. In any event, I've worked in a mom and pop store. I grew up working in my father's drugstore in Cleveland, west side of Cleveland, and since I was 8 years old. So I know what it's like to be in a family business. I was working there let me know what kind of business you're working in or company, and I can maybe address it a little differently. But so in the succession planning meetings, they're talking about attitude. They're looking at attitude is a really key thing. And, I know it's hard to disguise it for some of us when we're upset or frustrated, but that is something to be aware of, how you're coming across, because it can affect whether they want to slot you. So the conversation may go like this. A medical device company? Cool. The conversation might go like this. I'll give you an example. I had or I could give you a couple examples. There's this guy, I'm going to say his name's Randy, not his real name. This is about a blind spot, right? So Randy came to me and said, Mike, I was working with the team. The team was struggling with some things. He was talking to me privately. He said, Mike, I'm the one that speaks up on the team and says the thing that everyone else is basically too chicken to ask. They don't have the courage to ask, but I get reamed for it. And so I arranged to just kind of observe at the next team meeting, and I was there as an advisor to the team, and the leader was talking about something, and then a coworker said something in response, and Randy's face just turned red, and he stood up and he just pounded on the table and said, "That's a dumb idea," and went off on a rant on kind of what he thought should be done. He came up to me after the meeting, and then of course the leader told him to basically sit down and be quiet. So he came up to me after the meeting and said, "See, Mike, I told you I get reamed for it. I'm just saying, what needs to be said, the honest truth." What he wasn't, you need a job, okay? So welcome. So what he wasn't aware of was how he was coming across. I talked to him. I said, "Did you realize, like, when you stood up in front of the table, it got really quiet? Did you realize that, Sue, like, actually scooted her chair back a little bit?" And he said, no. "Did you realize that," right? And so this went on and on. And so he had a blind spot there. And he was a strong performer on the team. Kiru, welcome, Kiru. What's your name? Is it Kiru? I want to pronounce it correctly. Hope, welcome, Hope. Okay, I got it. Got the message there. Okay, so, and you guys, just to let you know, if there's Kiru, okay, great, welcome. So attitude's a thing. Another story as well. There was this other director who was advocating for one of his employees, and thought he was the greatest thing, and sharing this with some fellow directors during a succession planning meeting. Basically, it's called a talent review part of the meeting, where they're basically looking at different employees in the company and saying what are their strengths, what are their development needs, what would be some potential next steps for them to improve their overall effectiveness or to get to the next level, type of thing. Or maybe they need a lateral move for development, whatever it may be. So, he's advocating for this one employee, and one of the other directors says, "You know what? I have a different view to offer. A lot of my employees complain about this individual. They complain about him because he doesn't return their emails. He kind of ignores their emails. He takes credit. He's taken credit for some things that they've done themselves, and he takes the credit. And he's been rude. He's kind of been condescending in some team meetings, some project team meetings, and welcome, Lefty. And so this was news to the boss because this individual was good at managing up. Right? You guys know that? I mean, give some hearts or something, or type in if you know people who are really good at managing up, or you might say kissing up, all right, influencing up, right? All these terms. He was really good at shaping his boss's opinion there, and so the director in the room was really unaware. So this was an eye-opener for him, and someone else in the room chimed in and said, "You know what? I had a personal experience with this individual before I became director, and I can vouch for that. He kind of behaved that way, and it was all about him. It was all about him." He said, "We can't in good conscience, put him on the succession plan." I'll talk about what the actual succession plan is. People ask all the time. We can't in good conscience put him on the succession plan or consider him to be a high potential employee, which is a term they use. High potential is like a classification. We can't consider him a high potential employee until he mends some fences, right? He's got a lot of broken relationships, and so what the director's task was. One, they asked if he's ever provided this employee feedback, and the answer was no, because he wasn't aware it was a problem. So the director who supervised this employee, his task was to provide feedback to this employee, saying, this is going to derail your career. I can't advocate for you. This is what I've learned. And provide some coaching, some feedback, and some coaching to the employee that he's going to need to turn some things around before, or he's not going to get very far. in the company. It's just not acceptable within the company to behave that way. That's not the culture that they wanted. That's not the culture that the leaders in the company wanted to create. So we've talked about aptitude, right? So the capabilities now and for the future. We talked about a little bit about attitude. And now I'd like to talk about just aspirations. What are your career aspirations? So I cannot tell you how many times I'm in a meeting with managers and directors, because sometimes if you're in an organization, these people might be like, they could be one level above you, your direct supervisor, or they could be 2 or 3 levels above you, right? And so ideally what you want is you want multiple people advocating for you, right? Ideally. And so, one of the things, one of the tools you can use is to make your career aspirations known. And I can't tell you how many times that, we're sitting around the table and they think, oh, this person would be great, okay? Karu, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Kairu, I think it is. Would be great for this position. But does anyone know if he's interested? And so then it kind of stalls the process. Then it's an extra step. All right, thanks, Big. Yes, I know. I'm gonna try to do some earlier ones, Steve. Yeah, I'm gonna try to do. I have long days, so I'm gonna try to do some earlier ones. Like maybe 8 o'clock or maybe at 5:30 or something Pacific time. So I'll get there with that. So thanks for joining. So that's the key thing, is make your aspirations known. Now, because a lot of times it just stalls it. Now they have to go find out. It's guesswork, or they're kind of positioning you for a position that you don't even know. Okay, I'll do that, Steve. I'll do that. So they might be preparing you for a position you're not even aware of that you're being prepared for, right? And it might be something you really don't want. It might be something you really don't want. And so it's really in your best interest to have that conversation with your boss. Career aspirations. So now, who was it that asked the question? No, it wasn't John. Your boss didn't like you. Who was it that asked that? You don't like your boss didn't like you. Tell me more about that. Is that recent? Has it always been that way? Todd, thank you, Todd. So is that a recent thing? Like, how long has this been going on? Or what happened? In a nutshell. Is it different? You just have different personality styles? Is it that you didn't follow through on something? Is it, he's a new boss? What's the situation? So I'll speak a little bit to it while you're preparing some stuff. So what do you do then if, like Mike, no, I've been down there. I can't tell my boss my aspirations or anything. My boss is a total jerk, right? Okay. Oh, you're not. I'm sorry. You're not Todd. Todd left. All right. My boss is a. Is this interesting, you guys? You guys want to know this? Because if you left, I mean, I can talk about something else. You guys want to know more about this? What do you do in this situation? Okay. So. So depending on the circumstances, right? How long has it been going on? What's your contribution been? That's step one is, if you're, what's your contribution to this problem here? Welcome, free band. So, what's your contribution to the situation here? Why is it that you're not getting along? I've had my share of situations where I didn't see eye to eye with my bosses, and a key step is really analyze the situation. Like, what's my contribution here, and what's going on, and how would I like this resolved, ideally, right? How would I like it resolved? Are you at a point where you're beyond the point of repair? Are you at that point where there's nothing your boss could do to repair things, or vice versa. You've tried and tried, and you've just gotten no traction at all in trying to make things work. So if you're at that point, there may be a few other things you can do that you haven't thought of, and I'll talk about some things. But it might be a choice point, right? So rather than be miserable where you are and keep fighting it and resisting it, yeah, it may be time, right? If you're not already looking for another job, it may be time, because if you're then showing up with again, your attitude might likely turn negative in this situation, right? I've had to catch myself sometimes at just different points in my career, so that self-awareness is really key. So what can you do? I'll share a story. I had a boss this is very early in my career, not too long after I finished my undergraduate degree, and it was a Fortune 500 company, and I had a great boss, and then I didn't. I had a great boss. We got along great. We had good rapport, and the department was growing, and they hired someone new from the outside, and her style was totally different. Her style was totally different. The boss that I had a good rapport with was very sociable. We'd come into work, say, "Hey, Mike, how was your weekend?" or "How was your day?" and we'd chit chat a little bit, and then we'd get down to business. We get down to business. My new boss was all business. Like everything. I couldn't speak fast enough for her. She would interrupt me constantly, and I was so frustrated. And the straw that broke the camel's back for me was, at the time, I would get all these calls from all these different company locations, like these warehouse locations. Employees would call asking about like their benefits. They were asking about, I worked in a benefits department, health benefits department, medical benefits department. And I know, Todd, I think you were a medical device company. Or no, Todd left. John, you were medical device. Anyhow, so they're calling about, there's an 800 line. I'd take the messages off, and then I would call them back, usually within a few hours, and, help them out if they needed to enroll in benefits, or they're at the doctor's office with their kid and they need, some type of verification, or they want to know what's covered, if they can get glasses, whatever it may be, right? Many of you, if not all of you, have health benefits of some kind, hopefully. So, I'm helping them out, and she comes in and she basically assigns one of the admins in the group to take all the messages and give them to her. Now, mind you, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of messages that come in a day, like 60 to 80 a day on average. There were periods where we were getting, more than 100 a day. That's a lot of calls to respond to, right? That's a lot of calls. And so imagine this. So they're going, she's taking them, and they would sit on her desk for days, for days. And so can you imagine what happens? So people start calling back. People start calling back because they haven't heard from me. And so it was just compounding. And I was just really annoyed. And so ultimately, it started showing up at work. It was just, showing, I was definitely not a happy camper at work. And ultimately, I needed to confront her on it. But I had to do it in a way that was constructive, And fortunately, I had a mentor at the time that helped me strategize a little bit. But, I would ask, what's with the messages? She said, well, I haven't had a chance to look at them yet. I said, well, when do you think you'll have them? I said, I don't know. I'll try tomorrow. And I'm thinking, oh boy, that's just creating a mess for us. Eventually, I was able to share with her the impact, what was happening. I was able to share the impact of what was happening. And so, again, I didn't make it personal. I just said, well, here's kind of what's happening here is with the delay, people are calling back. They're frustrated. Some people have missed out. They've had to leave the doctor's office because they couldn't get verification or whatever it may be, or couldn't get their medication, whatever. So how did I get on this topic? We were on the topic of attitude and, what do you do if a boss, you don't get along with a boss? So the key thing here, I don't want to drone on and on about it, P. Daddio, welcome, welcome. So you can take steps to resolve things with your boss. Ultimately, I worked things out with her. We had some discussion. I learned I had to speak to her in like ABC 1, 2, 3 language, right? I couldn't be like with my former boss. I needed to just kind of. She was this type of person that just wanted you to get to the point, list things in just sequential order, and so I spent more time preparing before going in. So once that started happening, my relationship with her started to improve. She would come into my office and say, "Hey, Mike, how you doing?" And what do you suppose my reaction was when she starts being all nice? What do you suppose my reaction was? I was suspicious. I was like, "What's going on here?" But the funny thing was, as I tried to adapt a little bit to her style and understand how she preferred to receive information and operate, she started moving in my direction too. And eventually things were so good, and she wrote me a recommendation when it was time for me to go to grad school and whatnot, and the Peace Corps. I wanted to go into the Peace Corps. I never ended up in the Peace Corps, but she did write a recommendation. So, long story short, if you have a boss that you don't get along with, it's not always resolvable. I could tell you a million more stories around situations I've had with bosses, but it's like any work relationship. You got to figure out how to make it work. Because obviously they're an advocate for you, and other managers or directors will call them. So if I have a position in the company, and some companies have different policies, but generally, even informally, if Sally, the manager, has a position open, and Todd or John, you've applied for it, then I may ask her. I said, John's applied for one of my positions. Tell me more about him. Like, what are your thoughts about him? So they talk to each other. They talk to each other, and they want to know. And if your relationship is poor, it's going to be difficult for Sally to advocate for you, right? Or if Sally doesn't really know what your aspirations truly are, she might say, "Oh, I'm surprised he applied for that position. I would have thought he'd be interested in something different than that." Right? So again, you can manage some of that. You can manage some of that by having some of those candid conversations. Now, so what do you do if you're in a situation then, if it's a boss that you just plain don't get along? You could try to get something in another department. It'll be challenging. You could have the conversation with them saying, "You know what?" And I've had some of these conversations. It's just not working out, and I like working here. I'm trying. I want it to work. It's for whatever reason, it's not. And I'm wondering if there might be some. I wonder if we can. I'm wondering. Welcome, Game Boy. I'm wondering if we can. I wonder if there's a way that we can figure out some other options for me. How are you doing there? I like your icon there. So I wonder if there's something we can work out, and then you can just have a candid conversation, human to human. You're acknowledging that the two of you just haven't been able to work things out. Well, you're welcome. You're not able to work things out, but, then you can appeal to the human side, even if you haven't had the best relationships. And they might, at that point, be willing to help you find a place for you within the company where it would be a better fit. Right? So succession planning, just to repeat my name's Mike Gelman. We've had some new people come on. I'm the author of Pipe Dreams, 7 Pipelines of Career Success. And you can go to my website, mikegelman.com, for more information. You can, Curly Cutie, welcome. You can also go to, I have a Facebook author page, so go to facebook.com/7 pipelines, number 7 pipelines. And I have rebroadcasts of these videos available there. I have some mini blogs that I've done. I have links to some articles I've written as well. So there's some free resources there. My goal is to help you. I don't want you guys to needlessly suffer. And often just because you don't know what you don't know. And so one of my goals is to help provide more transparency. So that's why tonight I'm talking about succession planning and what are the conversations that go on behind the scenes. Now, there's also the informal conversations that occur, the water cooler conversations, right? there's the water cooler conversations that occur too. And a lot happens with regards to that. So if you, for example, made your boss shine, like if you totally came through for your boss and delivered on something, oftentimes that becomes the topic of a water cooler conversation, with another manager saying, I was really nervous about this. And Game Boy, man, he totally pulled it off. He came through. Okay, now there's not a position open. They're not talking about trying to slot you in a position like in the formal succession planning, but guess what just happened? Right, Game Boy? Guess what just happened? You totally just got some positive credits with that other manager without even knowing it. And so, if you're showing up and you're performing well and you have strong relationships, you have this positive vibe going for you and other people know about you. And, eventually over time, you may get approached by a manager. It might be your own manager or might be someone else to encourage you to apply for a job, right? And you're thinking, what? They don't even know about me. But so part of that's just how you show up at work and how you perform and whatnot. So I'm pretty much, I think I'm going to wrap up. If you guys have questions, you have comments or questions, I'll take a few minutes to field any comments or questions. And then we'll kind of wrap it up for the evening. I think I might talk about some more career myths tomorrow. I talked about a couple last night and I made a detour tonight. Sandcastle, I don't know if you're still on. You were there last night. So, questions? Nothing? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll call it a wrap for tonight. I hope this was somewhat valuable for you. Hope you got a nugget or two out of it. If you think of something else, then again, go to MikeGelman.com. Sorry, I'm slurring my words tonight. MikeGelman.com. And long day. And you can go to the Contact Us tab and you can reach me that way. You can also reach me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. You can also reach me through my Facebook author page, and there I give free advice, so that's a great place for chatting. Other people can benefit from that as well. So I'm committed to doing these Periscopes for a few more weeks. This is my fifth Periscope now. So I'm going to go at it, and we'll assess and continue it. So if you like it, give hearts or make comments on the Facebook author page. That will let me know that's of value to you, and I'll continue doing them for as long as I can. Okay, so with that, thank you guys for joining. Keep your dream alive, stay in the game, and we'll see you tomorrow night.